Good morning, folks. Welcome to Ash AllenTalks. I'm Ash, your host from Dubai. And we have met a lot of entrepreneurs and startup people in our podcast in last sessions and last episodes. Today, we're having a very important guest. And I think it's our second meeting here happening. And Cierra Lueke, welcome to Ash AllenTalk.
Thank you so much for bringing me back on. I'm excited to be here.
Wow. With the same spirit, I would like to ask one question, Cierra. A lot of people confusing the business with entrepreneurship. So there are startups are coming up even after AI and the new NVIDIA chips passed out, and a lot of people have access to NVIDIA chips and machine learning and a lot of computing happening around us. So people used to name their business by a domain of .ai, and they think that is the new trend and people will attract to that kind of technology or new wordings and all. So what do you think about this thing and what is going on right now?
With the naming a business by the name AI has actually been around for decades. It's just more prominent. People know that it's AI and they refer to it as AI, but everything goes through waves and trends, and it's all a cycle. And so right now, it's still very popular. There's a really big book. It's really thick, and I'm trying to think of the name of it right now. It'll come to me. But inside of this book, it talks about the cycles and the waves that these marketing trends or that like the real estate market or these other markets go through over time. And what tends to happen is you have in the very beginning, nobody knows about it, right? And so then you have the early adopters. And so once you get in the early adopters, you start to see a little bit of a rise in people picking it up, people using it. And then it gets to a peak point where it reaches its highest level of awareness. And so now everybody knows about it. And most people are using it. And then it starts to dip down. And on the backside, it's when literally everybody is using it now. So even like the late adopters, the people who are like, no, I'm not going to use that. They start picking it up. They finally come around. They start using it. But I think what we're seeing right now is we're actually on that tail end of that curve. So it's going to have a downturn, and there's going to be something else that takes over and takes its place as the most prominent and the most interesting. It's like AI had its like bright light shining moment because it's shiny, it's new, it's something that a lot of people have never used before. But once everybody kind of has awareness of it and they get used to it, it gets integrated into our normal standard way of life. And so as far as like naming a domain, that you don't actually need a website or a domain to have a business. Now you can build a tech business and you can use AI as one of those techs, but there's so much AI. I feel like right now going into AI, unless you are innovating and coming up with some kind of new AI system, you're one of the coders who actually codes AI and you're creating your own, like, you know, like Claude or OpenAI or one of these other actual original AI sources. Unless you're doing that, I don't really think that there's, it's kind of a red ocean, just meaning that there's so much competition out there for it. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily the best place to start an entire business off of. If you wanted to start freelancing and getting clients where you actually generate AI prompts or you're actually utilizing AI and you're an expert in specific types of AI or something like that, there's a big market for that where people will hire you to do the AI for them because now that they understand AI and how difficult it can be to use, or how difficult it can be to get really good output on the back end, there's definitely a lot of need to manage the AI. And so if you're a manager of AI, I see that actually as a really big open spot in the market right now.
Wow. And Sierra, I was thinking about one more question regarding this AI. So right now we have ChatGPT and Chinese DeepSeek and all. So think about the perspective of a consumer, right? So we're paying subscription to those kind of AI technologies, and we're trying to use that one in some kind of a forum or in a Facebook ad or to create a content from that kind of AI. And actually, does it work and the user can earn money from AI? Is it a question mark, or how you seeing from your point of view?
So how people generate money doesn't necessarily have to do with AI. AI can just simplify the process of staying in the creative zone or creating content quicker. There's probably some corporate businesses that can it's okay for them to have really generic content as output, and that generic content is fine. And then because they're just doing such a bulk of content that they're
Hmm.
putting out,
Yeah.
whether that's social media content or it's emails or it's website copy, they're just creating so much all the time that it's fine to have it be a little bit more generic. And so coming from AI, being a freelancer in that respect, or an independent contractor working for some of these corporate companies is probably fine. But then as far as like generating and launching your own business, you have to set yourself apart, because the only people who are going to hire lower quality output, which is what the majority of AI is, the majority of AI generated content, unless you have really good inputs, which means that you're excellent at utilizing the AI, unless you have really good input that goes into it as the prompt to generate what comes out on the back end. What comes out on the back end is typically very vague, it's very generic, it's very simplistic, and it doesn't really stand out against other content. Now, I do have one example. One of my clients, he was mainly doing kind of, I would have called him like a mindset worker. He was working with business owners on their mindset and helping them through like really hard moments and tough times. And he worked with me. We got him to get over his setbacks around not really wanting to make money. And I was like, well, the more money you have, the more people you can give into, the more people you can help. And I was like, so making money is not actually a bad thing. He was very big on like not having a lot of ego. So after that, he started getting into creating content. He really enjoyed what we were working on. And then he started playing around with AI. And then he got really deep into AI. He started hosting these workshops, and now he generates all of his content with AI. And so what he does, though, at the end of the day, is he records himself actually doing his reflections on the day, doing his reflections on the content, and then he takes his reflections and inputs that into AI and has very specific prompts and different ways that he uses the AI. It takes him about 15 minutes, and he generates so much content from it. But it's because it's a transcript of him actually talking and him stating his thoughts. And so the AI is taking from this transcript. And that's actually what I do with the majority of my clients is we'll record some. I'll ask them, kind of like you're interviewing me here today and like you interview all of your people. I'll get those transcripts from interviewing my clients, and then I'll plug that into the Chat GPT or Claude, and then I'll give it a few very specifics that I want from that, and then I'll go back and forth until I really like the output that it gives me. But I start with the transcript, which is in my client's tone of voice and has my client's actual details, and then it gives me very specific content, as opposed to asking it to write something from scratch based on a target market in a niche, which is super generic.
Wow. And Sierra, I have observed you for past few weeks actually, and your followers, you have thousands of followers, and you are a great content creator. And to be honest with you, a lot of people love your post, and even myself. And how to keep this engagement for how long? And the people are, even if I post a post, you can see only 2 or 3 comments and 2 or 3 likes behind it in some cases in personal account, apart from the business. But how you mixing this personality with the business, and how to keep and engage the people with social media, and what is the magic behind it?
So I wouldn't say that it's, well, I guess you could call it magic. I like that term. We can use that. Um, I would say that one of the pieces that a lot of people lose, especially when they start utilizing AI to generate content for them, is that we need to keep it conversational. And so when I post a post or when I'm writing a piece of content, because I still write all of my own content, I don't use AI for my content. I don't have anyone on my team who writes it for me. I still write all of my own content. When I'm writing my content, I am just speaking like a normal person. And it's the natural way that I think, it's the natural way that I talk and communicate. So if I was having a conversation with you one to one, like what we're essentially doing right now, this format of conversation would be a great post, because
Hmm.
I'm just having a normal conversation. So when you have to think of it from the experience of the end user. So the end user is sitting here scrolling. So first off, you're competing against pictures of puppy dogs and cats like falling off of chairs or something silly like that. And you're competing against video and against other really viral user generated content. And as you're scrolling the news feed, all these other things are coming up to distract you from the day, and you have to think about how
Yeah.
people are using the platform as well. So I've now coached people across all different social media platforms, but so for Facebook specifically, so just utilizing that as our example for right now, on Facebook, people are going there to connect with friends, to connect with ideas, to connect with groups. There's no other platform that has groups built in such a way that people actually spend time inside of them and hang out in them for specific topics. School is trying to do that, but school's just not really picking up as a platform in general. The only people who are really bringing people over to school right now are the business owners who are launching these new school groups. And so it's more like a Kajabi, I would say, than like a Facebook. So Facebook being that social media platform where people go specifically to be social, they go there to unwind at the end of the day. Sometimes in the middle of the day, they'll jump onto Facebook to just kind of decompress from other things that they're doing, or to kind of escape mentally, to get away from work and to just kind of jump over to Facebook for a minute. And then you have like the whole like handful of entrepreneurs who jump onto Facebook who are doing it for business, but they still have that natural training for when they're not doing business. They go to Facebook to just kind of unwind and hang out. And so you want your content to feel more like a hangout and like a natural conversation. So in business, there are several different times that, or several different situations where the way that we talk is going to change or shift. So if you're in a situation where you have your team who's doing all of the activities for your business and it's very professional, you talk in one specific way. So the way you hold conversations is very professional. And then you go to a networking event, and the way that you talk at a networking event, you're strategically creating connections. Like, what can I do for you? What can you do for me? Like, what could we potentially do in the future? Like, how could we connect? That's what you're looking for at networking events. And you might hang out and chat a little bit about like personal things, but primarily you're there to talk business. And then you have your personal life. So like inside of your office, you might have certain places where you sit down and you just do like content creation. And then you might have other places, like me, I have different zones in my office. So I have one that's for content creation, one that's for planning my business that has no electronics. Then I have this spot right here where I do all of our recording. And anytime I'm a guest, like this is my spot to actually connect with other people. And so because of that, the language and the way that I treat conversations in each location and the way that I think changes. And so when we go to social media, we have those pieces too. So on Facebook, people are going there to be a little bit more social. Maybe there's a little bit of business, but it's primarily social. So we want our content to feel very social, very casual. We don't want it to feel like a corporate thing where it's like an article. Because that's not what people go to Facebook for. Now, however, if you go to LinkedIn, it's going to be more of that professional conversation. We're talking with teams and team members. We're talking with leaders of corporate companies. We're talking with business owners. And reading an article on LinkedIn makes a lot of sense. And so on LinkedIn, you might post some kind of academic article that has to do with your industry or your business. And then you go to Instagram, and it's primarily image and video rich. So there's not even a lot of conversations happening on the post as much as there is on Facebook. So the conversations on Instagram primarily happen. There's a little bit that goes on in the comments, but primarily it happens inside of Meta. And so then you get over to TikTok, and a very similar dynamic to Instagram, where it's primarily video rich with some images, and primarily the conversations are happening in the comments on TikTok. And so that's like, once you understand on the different platforms, like where are people hanging out, where are they talking, what is the communication style of the platform, it actually makes it a lot easier to generate that content. And then the second piece of that, I would say, is the hook that you use, because again, they're just scrolling. Most of the time people are picking up a mobile device. They're not typically on a laptop. They're on a mobile device and they're just scrolling. And so what's going to stop them? We need something that hooks their attention. So whether that's using a really great image that has one focal point, or it's using some really good hook that actually makes people want to read the rest of it. It's like if you read the first 5 words of any post and it is not interesting in the first 5 words, you're probably not going to capture people's attention.
Yeah. And Sierra, I was thinking about you that you are a great content creator and you are a singer, you are a lyric writer, and you are a business owner and entrepreneur, and you are a mother, and how you manage your time. Just we have 24 hours, right? And how to manage and how you prioritize your task and how your day will be look like.
So first, first off, I prioritize my business right now a lot. I do in the evenings. I prioritize my kids. If I see my kid throughout the day, because my kids are all homeschooled, so we do school at home. If I see my kids throughout the day, I will stop and give them a hug. No matter what I'm doing, no matter where I'm going, even if I'm on my way to a meeting that starts right now, I will stop and take the 15 to 20 seconds to hug my child so that I have that balance. Because what's the point of having this amazing business if I don't ever get to spend time with my kids, right? If I don't get to be there for my kids. So the reason that I do my business is to support my family. It's to be able to afford my family this really nice lifestyle. We have we go where we want, we do what we want, we eat what we want, we sign up for the programs and fun activities that we want to sign up for. We went on 3 vacations last year, which is really cool. We've never, like in any of the previous years, we've never gone on vacations before as a family, except for like Christmas visiting family, but that doesn't really feel like a vacation. It feels like, we're celebrating a holiday. So it's specifically for that, as opposed to just going somewhere for the sake of relaxing. So last year was the first year we ever did that. And these opportunities wouldn't even be possible if it weren't for the business that I've created. And so as far as priorities go, it's I had a friend when I was growing up as a mom, as a young mom. My kids are much older now. I have a child who's 18. I have another 16-year-old, a 14-year-old, and then I have 2 younger ones who are 10 and 7. But when I was a younger mom and my kids were all younger, she used to tell her kids all the time, she was like, okay, there's no fire, no flood, no blood. Okay, we're good. Like, it's not an emergency.
Yeah.
And I think it's understanding the difference between, being able to really compartmentalize your brain. And it's like, I have an office, and at the end of the day, I walk out. So I actually hired a VA. She comes in and she uses my main computer to do work. So I have to be out of my office by 7 p.m. and so that she can take over and she can do work from my computer. And so I leave my office at 7 p.m. And when I shut that door to my office, I'm not working anymore. I go out there and I'm like, okay, now what? It's like, where is everybody? What are we doing tonight? And I'll go and I'll spend time with my family. I'll spend time with my husband. My husband and I, to maintain our relationship, because one of the things that we recognized in his parents, he's one of 4 kids, and his mom kind of lost herself because she just made her whole life about her kids. And there's nothing wrong with that. For the women who are doing that, like, that's amazing. And it's so wonderful for your children. But one of the things that we recognized was after the kids moved out of the house, she was still very obsessed with the kids' lives because that was her entire life. And she kind of lost herself and who she was. And she had to rediscover some of the things that she actually really enjoyed. And what do I like? And what do I want to do with my life? And so knowing that, I've always had that in the back of my mind since we first got married. And we've now been married for more than 20 years. And so because of that, I'm very wary of paying attention to making sure that I'm doing hobbies I enjoy, that I'm pursuing passions of mine, because if I don't show my kids that now, then my kids are going to not prioritize that themselves, because kids don't do what you say or what you tell them. They do what you do, because they pick up on those habits, those subtle habits, and the way that you control your world, the way that you communicate with other people, the way that you prioritize things in life. Kids naturally pick up on those habits. And so for me, a lot of the time, I'm making those decisions based on what example do I want to be setting for my children and for my family. And so my husband and I also have a date night at least once a week. We go out and we just are just the two of us together. No, well, I'd like to think that most of the time we don't turn on our phones. We're not checking notifications because we know that everyone's okay and that
Mm.
there's not going to be any kind of major emergency that our kids can't handle because we have teenagers who watch the younger siblings. And so it's understanding that we have time blocks for different things. And when you are in one time block, we need to be focused on the moment of now and just being in the situation that we're in. So if we're in business, be all in on business. If we're with our family, be all in on your family and be focused on them. And I think the best way to do that is to not have to worry about finances, like to get your finances in such a place. And so it's like if your current business or where you're at in life with making money isn't generating enough for you to sleep peacefully at night, then change something immediately. Like
Mm.
if the offer that you're giving out, it has a cap on how much you can charge. Like
Yeah.
say that a specific offer you can only charge 500, but if you had sold a $5,000 offer and you were working with one client for 5,000 versus one client for 500,
Mm.
it's like you're going to have to take on 10 clients for that one client. And so it's
Yeah.
like instead of working for 10 clients at 500, you could work with one client for 5,000. And when you work with that one client for 5,000, now all of a sudden your income is significantly increased. And so then you also can think about like, okay, well, is there an offer that I could do for 50,000? And if I
Mm.
did the 50,000 for one client, it would take 10 of the $5,000 clients to
Mm.
equal that. And it's like maybe 50,000 is your number of freedom, you know? And
Yeah.
so it's like understand what your number of freedom is to give you that peace of mind to where when you sit down to dinner at night with your family and you want to just be present with them, if you're
Mm.
thinking about business and you're stressing about things about business, something has to change. So whether it's a really needy client or it's the number that's coming into the bank account, make that change as quickly as possible because especially when it comes to family or children, it just goes by so fast. It
Yeah.
goes by so fast. And it's like sometimes it feels like things are moving slow like molasses or whatever.
Yeah.
Molasses is really thick and sticky. So it's like if you it just like when you go to pour it, it just pours really, really slow.
Slow.
And
Yeah.
so sometimes it feels like things are moving slow like molasses, but the time just passes so fast with kids and then they grow up and they move out and they move on with life. And when they move on with life, then what? Then what? And you don't have that chance if you didn't already create those relationships with them when they were younger, if you weren't present with them when they were younger, you don't have that chance again in the same way. So it's been very important to me to make sure that I'm getting that time with my family as well as business. And then as far as hobbies go, it's more like whatever I feel like pursuing or doing, whatever I feel like having fun with, and then I guess one of the new things that I'm stepping into is like finding a hobby that gets me around like a community of people
Mm.
because we've gone to church to create community, we've gone to networking events to create community, and those have been okay, but I haven't found anyone that just like sticks by my side all the time in the same way. Like, I don't know, we just haven't connected with people in that same way. So I'm looking for like activities where we work on things and we go through challenges together because that builds a stronger bond.
Yeah. And Sierra, you're having a very beautiful family, and you are in very busy times with loving your family, and you are maintaining your family well, and you parallelly you growing your business, and it's very happy to hear from you. And thank you very much to let us know about your family and the business that you are doing right now. And actually, when it's come to the family and the business, the managing the stuff is very hard, really. And you say it in a simple way, but I don't know how the people will understand. And you are successful on it, and I can see that one. And Sierra, when it's come to the economy right now, the inflations keep hiring up, and the housing prices keep hiring, and a lot of cost keep higher, and we can see the inflation and we can feel it day by day, and the economical and political situation keep changing. So how these external factors affecting the business and how we can overcome that one. I mean, the price margin, can we change any kind of strategies that we have implemented in the business, or planning stuff, or strategical point of view, how you seeing the business and how we can enhance with the parallelly with the economical challenges?
Like, do you have grandparents that are still alive?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so when your grandparents were kids, the price for groceries was so much smaller. Like my grandma passed away already, but I remember talking to her when I was
I'm
younger,
I'm
and
very
I
sorry
asked
about
her,
that. Yeah.
well, I mean, it was a long time ago. I like 20 years ago.
Wow.
But I remember asking her when I was younger, I was like, well, how much did bread cost when you were a kid? It was only 10 cents. To give you an understanding of how much bread costs now, so there's 100 cents inside of $1 in
Hmm.
the US, and bread now is $4 to $5 a loaf. Massive, massive difference.
Yeah.
And so it's just funny to think about that, like, inflation has always been there.
Yeah.
So this is what I was going to say earlier, is that when we were going through that time of poverty, we ended up taking a course by Dave Ramsey, and there was this really funny thing that he talked about. He said, Christmas is coming up,
Hmm.
and yet you
Hmm.
wait until the last minute to
Yeah.
start saving up money for Christmas. So it
Yeah.
feels like a lot of pressure and it feels really stressful. Whereas if you know that it's coming up and you start setting aside money all year round, and we started some of those habits at that time, never as good until like last year. Last year, we really set money aside for Christmas. It was great. It was the first year we ever did that. It relieved so much stress and pressure. It was really cool. But he said, so if you know that it's coming, it's not an emergency when it happens because you're planning ahead for it. Well, he said, you know that inevitably there's a rainy day of some sort where
Hmm.
a pipe bursts in the house, or you have to change an appliance, or a tire gets flat on the vehicle, or there's some kind of like somebody falls and breaks a bone suddenly and you have to go to the hospital, and then there's some medical bills or something. There's some kind of a rainy day that happens. And so when it's going to rain outside, you usually bring an umbrella and
Hmm.
you prepare for it, and you go buy the umbrella when it's not raining, even though
Hmm.
even though it's not raining, you know that it's going to rain at some point, and so you have an umbrella. So he said, have an emergency savings fund, right? And so that was that principle of preparing for a rainy day. It's like, well, inflation has always happened year over year, and sometimes it's more and sometimes it's less.
Hmm.
So because we already had such a really big inflation in the last like couple of years, probably over the next year or two, we're not going to have a super huge inflation again. But
Hmm.
it's still going to rise. It's going to be more in the future. It's never going to be less again, because what we're having is just the what the dollar is worth changes, and so what the price of regular goods also is changing, right?
Yeah.
And so the thing is like, if you're just making the same amount of money each year, you're actually losing money. You should
True.
be increasing prices. So if everything inflates, so do your prices.
Hmm.
And you transition people over and you sit down and figure out, like, even minimum wage. When I was first getting a job, like, minimum wage was like $6 an hour. And now minimum wage in America is like $15 an hour. So my
Hmm.
kids could go work at like the lowest of the low fast food restaurants. There's a place called Taco Bell out here, and it's just like really terrible Mexican food. And it is like one of the lowest of the low places that you could work, and they pay $15 an hour.
Hmm.
And when I was younger, like, getting $15 an hour was like you're an expert in your field. And so
Yeah.
that's just part of life. That's just inflation is just part of life. And so if you know that things are going to inflate over time, then you're not worried about it. It should just be a standard practice to increase
Hmm.
your prices with the year. Like, the year
Yeah.
your
True.
prices should
True.
increase. It should, like, whether it's by $1, $2, or $500, your prices should be going up. If inflation is happening, then your prices should also be going up. And that's not,
Yeah. Yeah.
I
It
don't think
makes.
it's really that big of a deal once you understand that it's just normal. It's just a normal part of life, and
Wow.
it's expected.
Yes, yes, it makes sense. And Sierra, we have discussed a lot about the family life and how the social media work and how our entrepreneurship life should be, and so much thing we have discussed. And at last, I would like to ask a question, Sierra, that for entrepreneurs who are listening to this podcast, what is your advice for these startup people and the new entrepreneurs who are coming into the market?
You know what's funny is that I've had a lot of friends who have really big offers. They've made a lot of money, like hundreds of thousands of dollars with their offers, and yet still they are choosing to start new offers right now, which I find so funny. It's fascinating to me, but there's this huge wave of people who are actually starting for the very first time. So, one of the pieces that I've been talking with several people about recently is that there's so many ways that we could amplify how we make money, that we could amplify how we get business, that we could add to how we get business. But every time you add in a new step, whether that's building a website or building out your email list or having to create an email campaign or building out funnels or building out an entire social media marketing plan or launch plan or something along those lines, every time we do that, all we're doing is adding in complexity and adding in more steps to the sale.
Yeah.
So if somebody has to find you on social media and then go to your website and then sign up for something and then get an email and then book a call and then they
Mm.
get on a call with you, how many
Yeah.
steps was that? Was that like
Yeah.
5 steps? That's 5 steps until they get on a call with you. Whereas if you just had a conversation with a person and they were a good fit, you could just instantly book a call and make a sale.
Mm.
So adding in all that complexity, all it does is make more work for you. And so I
Yeah.
say in the beginning, the best skill you can do is network, is just connecting with other people. Just get really good at connecting with other people and do it the same way you would do in person. So if you're in person at a networking event, you might walk up to somebody and start a conversation. And you're
Mm.
not going to just walk up to some stranger at a networking event and be like, "Hey, here's my offer. Do you want to buy it?" No,
Mm. Yeah.
you actually have to have relevancy. So there are certain situations where you can do that. Back in the day when my husband and I had our construction business, I would call all of the different lateral industries. So we had a high-end custom millwork and trim carpentry and cabinets. We used to do like high-end millwork inside of like million-dollar homes, which now would be multi-million-dollar homes because of inflation.
Yeah.
So we used to do all of the really nice trim work for like woodworking inside of these homes. And so I called every interior designer that was back then it was in the yellow pages, but now you could just do a Google search and find every single lateral business if you work in B2B. I called all of them and I said, "Hey, this is what we do. Do you have any projects that we could come bid out or bid on?" And I got several jobs for my husband that way for him to go bid on. And we ended up getting several projects just by me reaching out to somebody where it made sense, which is why on LinkedIn, people are expecting to get prospected for business to business, but it has to be something that makes sense. It can't be like, "I could generate you leads," because everybody does that right now. And
Yeah.
people don't want somebody who can generate them leads. And they definitely don't even want free leads. They want somebody who, when it comes to lead gen, they want somebody who has been proven, who has social proof, and they'd rather get it from a referral or from their network than get it from some random stranger. Most people don't want that. The only people who are looking for that are people who are brand new, who haven't been jaded by it yet. But the
Yeah.
likelihood that they're going to be jaded really fast, very, very high, very high. And so for anyone new or starting out, like just get really good at having conversations, find out what people's problems are. So if you're
Mm.
talking to your target market, find out what their problems are. What are the problems that they're facing? How do they talk about it? What are the results that they really say that they want? And it's like when they say it, ask them like why? Like,
Mm.
oh, what's the reason that that's the issue, or what's the reason that you really want that? Because people always answer with a surface level answer first, and then we want to dig a little bit deeper. So get really good at those communications and finding out what the problems and the solutions are. What's their version of heaven? What's their version of hell on earth?
Mm.
Find out what those things are, and that'll make your content better. It'll make your communication better. It'll make your pitch better for your offer. It's just getting really good at.
Ask one more question regarding the entrepreneurship. And you are into the entrepreneurship. And when you started and how you get this motive, you have to start your own business. And what was the first step that you have took in your life?
Okay, so I started my entrepreneurial endeavors when I was a kid because I used to go to the store with my mom and I would ask her for things. And when I was really little, she would say yes, probably because I asked for really cheap things when I was little because I didn't understand. But as I got older, I started asking for a few more expensive things and I just started kind of expecting her to always have the money and always be able to buy what I wanted. And there was this one time at the store where my mom looked at me and she was like, no, like I can't wait, like we can't afford that right now. And that just like stuck out in my mind so hard. So when I was younger, I was like, oh, well, if I want things, I just have to have money. So
Hmm.
I started trying to like sell my things to people. And the reason that that started is because my mom used to do garage sales and then she would make like all of this cash and I saw people giving her money. And so I would watch her do these garage sales and, you know, with the garage sale, you know, you just open up the garage door, you have all the stuff inside, people come in, they take a look, they buy stuff, they give you money for it. And so it was like that was the first like exchange that I saw where you just got cash. And so I used to set up like a little cart outside. And so at first it started with lemonade and making lemonade for the garage sales for the people who would come over to the garage sale. And then it turned into I went and grabbed my parents' cans of soda and set those up to
Hmm.
sell. And they're like, hey, like you're selling our drinks. And I was like, I know, but look at all the money I make. And then they let me keep the money, which was really cool. And then eventually I was like, hey, y'all's garage is really messy. If I did a garage sale for you, would you let me keep the money? And they let me keep the money. And so I just kind of started when I was younger. Both of my parents always had like some kind of a side hustle. I grew up, my dad was in bands, like rock bands, rock and roll. He plays the guitar, he's really good at it.
Wow.
So he was always in and out of the studio. He was working with a lot of really famous artists down in Houston. There was a studio that he helped out with down in Houston. And so he was always in and out of the studio working there and then in bands. And so then his side hustle was he actually tuned pianos. And so sometimes over time, like the piano just starts sounding bad and it either needs to be tuned or the strings or other parts need to be replaced. And pianos are very expensive to maintain over time. And so he had a really great business doing that, but it was a lot of work. He didn't really enjoy it. So he didn't stick with it forever, but he did that for several years. And then my mom always had some kind of like an affiliate marketing or network marketing business on the side that she was doing, and I would used to help her out with that and try to like sell people more things because it was just kind of fun to see what we could get people to buy and how we could promote these events and how we could host these events. And so I started doing that as a kid just for fun. And that's really where my entrepreneurial spirit kind of started, where it's like, well, if you want something, you just go make it happen. Like you just go
Hmm.
do it, go get it. And
Yeah.
so I I grew up. I think my first like official job was an internship at a camp where I was volunteering and I actually had to pay to be there.
Hmm.
I had to pay to go work over the summer, but it was a lot of fun for me. It was a church camp, so it was like a religious camp, like related to my religion, and it was a lot of fun. I got to go there over the summer. I would intern there over the summer, then I would babysit while I was in school, and then when I was 16, I got a job at a photography shop. And then
Hmm.
I was a dance instructor, and then I also worked at a bakery and cafe for my nanny's sister owned a bakery and cafe in our local town, and so I worked there as like a hostess and waitress, and it was a lot of fun. And I was learning how to bake from her, which was also very fun. And but I had 3 jobs at one time, and it was just because I was super ambitious. I wanted to. I was just like I didn't want anything holding me back. But I did work for minimum wage because I didn't know that there was a better way. And
Hmm.
so eventually I was like, we have to start a business of some sort. When my husband and I got together, I was 18 years old when we got married. I met him when I was 17. We got married when I was 18. And his dad was really into real estate. And we knew that real
Hmm.
estate was one of the best ways to grow your wealth over time. And so
Yeah.
that was when we first got interested in real estate. Now, granted, we didn't actually end up going anywhere with it at that time, but I got really interested in it. I actually picked up my real estate asset management certification like 10 years ago. Still haven't done anything with
Wow.
it, but I picked that up. We had bought a couple houses of our own since then. We're
Hmm.
currently living in a rental. We sold our last house before we moved out here. But so we've bought and sold 2 houses of our own.
Hmm.
And so it's just I guess entrepreneurship has always been one of those things that's just kind of been in my life. And
Hmm.
my mom did have a corporate job and it worked out pretty decently for her until she was 29 years into her job. And I think they were paying her roughly about like $10,000 a month at the time that she was 29 years in. So she was getting about $10,000 a month from her corporate job working for a university. And then they decided that they could bring in a couple students and pay them each 30,000 a year, and which would save them like $40,000 on their budget.
Wow.
And that if they did that, they wouldn't have to pay as much and they could get the same amount of work done. So they fired her after 29 years of being loyal
Oh
to their
no.
company, because loyalty is no longer seen as like really valuable in business overall. And so she ended up losing that job, but she was able to take her retirement because she had been with them for 29 years. So she took her retirement, and she still gets like a nice fund, a nice chunk of change every single month because of her retirement, which is really cool. So I can see the value in working like that over time, but you could get that same amount of money from one client.
Yeah.
You
True.
know, you could
True.
get one client to pay you that much every single month. And it's like, and if you could take on 2 to 3 clients, or maybe you can take on
Mm.
like 5 to 10 and have a small team of 2 to 3 people who do all of the work, and all you do is manage the clients. Like,
Yeah.
why would you ever work for 29 years full time to get
Mm.
that when you could build up your own business that makes infinitely more? Like, my first month in starting my business, and what really got me to launch my own high ticket offer, was I jumped into a mentorship, and they set a bare minimum of what you had to charge for your offer at $3,000. They said you have to build an offer that's at a minimum $3,000. So I set mine for 3,800 because I heard somebody say one time, and it just has stuck with me ever since. And I've trained everybody on this, is like, if you're going to charge 3,000, you might as well charge 3,800, because 3,800 actually sounds like less than 3,000. It's because the hundred versus the thousands. So mentally, it sounds like less. So you might as well charge the hundreds, because people don't actually care about the hundreds as long as it's not 4,000. It could be 3,900. They don't care. It's not 4,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my very first month in business, I made $1,900. My second month in business, I made $7,700. I remember calling my dad and saying, "Hey Dad, we're making it. Like, look at what I'm doing." And I remember him saying, "Well, that's great if you can continue it." And I was like, "Cool, I'm never going to share my money wins with you ever again." And I told him about that later, and he's like, "I'm so sorry." He's like, I never meant to discourage you from what you were doing. I just thought that was really cool. If it continues, that's really cool. And I was like, okay, yeah, like, but it came from his level of belief versus my level of belief. So my second month was $7,700, my third month was $12,000, and my fourth month was $20,000. And so that was a really quick road up. And I've seen other people do even more. One of my most recent clients, she decided what her offer was. She decided it was a big package and that she's working with people on mindset. And so she offered to this one person, I think she offered either a monthly cost or a paid in full for the year. And they chose to pay in full for the year $20,000. Her very first client, $20,000 paid in full up front.
Wow.
Like, there's just so much possibility out there if you are willing to try. And most people just won't even try. And most people view things as needing to be perfect. And so they'll actually put obstacles in front of themselves. Like, they'll say, I need to have a website to look legit. And so they won't even make offers until they have a website. And then the website's inevitably going to have problems. Not because websites have problems, but because if they wanted to go sell the offer, they already would have.
Yeah.
So they'll use the website as an excuse to not sell the offer. They'll use their marketing content as an excuse to not sell the offer. They'll use building out a funnel as an excuse to not sell the offer, when it's realistically, all you need to do is get on calls with people and just sell. All you need to do is just have a conversation with somebody and just sell. And so it's like we create all these obstacles for ourselves that just don't actually exist because we're afraid to try. And so I think that that's one of the things that was different about me in my story, is that I'm afraid to try, but I just do it anyway, because what's the worst that could happen? And when I think about it, the worst that could happen is I stay exactly where I am.
Of course, yeah. And you have a great role model, your father and your mother. They are entrepreneurs, and your father into rock band and your mother into entrepreneurship, and you are the same blood. So it happens, and but
Well, and he's
but
actually not, he's actually my stepfather.
hmm,
My biological father died when I was less than a year old, but my biological father apparently also at the point that he died, he had three different businesses.
oh,
So it's just like I would say that entrepreneurship is in my blood, but I really feel like entrepreneurship is in all of our blood. All of
yeah,
us go out and it's like if we don't like the job that we're in, it's like we're either an entrepreneur or we're an intrapreneur, but we all have that preneurship spirit.
hmm,
And so it's like our parents, it's like if they were working one job and it wasn't covering the bills, what would they do? They would go get another job, right?
hmm. Yeah. And Sierra, do you think the entrepreneurs are sellers or they are creators? How do you see?
Did you um I think I think it can be a little bit of both. I
Hmm.
like I would say that
Create and
the
sell, right? And they adding value to some kind of stuff, and they're the good
so
salesperson, right?
so
Actually,
we're
from the
all
basic point of view.
salespeople. We're all
Yeah.
salespeople. Every single one of us does sales. We just don't realize that we're doing sales because when we use the word sales, the way that
Hmm.
we grow up, we think sales has to be like QVC, where it's like QVC is like the one where they're selling products at like 2 o'clock in the morning on TV or something
Yeah.
like that back in
Yeah.
the day. So we all think that sales needs to be like, or like the Sham Wow, where he's like,
Hmm.
wow, guys, look at how well this works. And it's, you can get three, not just one for the price of 27.99, but three, one, two, three. And he's like very over exaggerated and it feels very
Hmm.
spammy. And you're like, that guy looks like an idiot. And you say stuff like that. But
Yeah.
it's like, instead of just selling products,
Hmm.
we're selling that our kids should eat the food that's on their plate. I think that that's a
Hmm.
very, for anyone who's a parent out there, it's a very universal experience that there's sometimes that the kids don't want the food that's on their plate. And so they'll push it away or they'll be like, I'm not hungry or whatever. And then you have to sell them on eating it, whether it's you're gonna punish them if they don't eat it,
Yeah.
or you're gonna like convince them of they'll get a dessert or they'll get something nice afterwards or whatever. It's like that is sales. We do
Yeah.
sales with our spouses too when we really want to do something that our spouse doesn't really want to do that
Hmm.
we sell them on the experience or we sell them
Yeah.
on how much they love us or whatever. That's sales. We're all
Hmm.
doing sales all the time and we just don't realize it. So sales is just persuasion. It's just
Hmm.
persuading somebody to do the thing that you desire to do. And because we live in a world with so many people, not everybody always wants to do what you want to do. And so sometimes you're persuaded and sometimes you persuade others. And that's just the ebb and flow of life. And so
Yeah.
we're all in sales. And then as far as creativity, we all have creativity too, because we were all born with an imagination. And so
Yeah.
where do you think the brilliant ideas come from?
Hmm.
They come from the imagination, they come from that creativity. And whether that creativity is harnessed into very um, structural and logical things that are very masculine, or that creativity is thrown into something that's a little more like creative, feminine energy around like art and music.
Hmm.
Like it doesn't really matter how it's harnessed. We all have imagination and we all have persuasion. And
Yeah.
that's something that everyone has, whether they feel like
Yeah.
they're an entrepreneur or not. I really do feel like those two things are very universal.
Yeah. Because I raised that question, Sierra. Some people think entrepreneur meaning they should invent something like Isaac Newton or Edison or some kind of innovation, and they have to find something like nothing in the world, and they are like a creator of something, and those are the entrepreneurs. And even one of my friend talked with me, and he's saying, okay, let's talk about Elon Musk. Okay, he invented this. He have electric vehicle and starship and this kind of big invention. These are the entrepreneurs, and I was
He's an
thinking, oh,
inventor. He's an inventor. That doesn't mean he's an entrepreneur, but he's an inventor and an entrepreneur, right? You
hmm,
can be an inventor without being an entrepreneur. My husband's grandfather used to work for a company, I think it was Bausch and Lomb is what it was called. And what it was a place where all these inventors, all these scientists came in and they would study different things and they would create new technology. So my husband's grandfather was actually one of the inventors of fiber optics.
Wow.
So he invented fiber optics, which then became used as, and now they call fiber optics something a little bit different. So they use fiber optic cables and they bury them in the ground to have much faster internet now. But at the
Yeah.
time, it was used for other things. And so he was the inventor of one piece of fiber optics. He didn't invent the internet that we have today, but he
Mm.
did invent a part of fiber optics. He also invented bifocals,
Mm.
which have now expanded into other things as well. And so over time, like even the things that Elon Musk has invented now are very small and minuscule to what they'll become in the future. And he's not the one who's inventing all the things in the future. Like he's going to pass
Yeah.
away at some point. I know he's very young right now. I think he's in his 50s. So
50s,
he's
yeah.
so he still has like a very long life ahead of him. But
Mm.
at some point, he's going to pass away and there's going to be somebody else, and his inventions are going to be carried forward and they're going to grow. And even the stuff that he invented, he didn't invent all of the pieces that go into that. Somebody else came
Mm.
before him who was an inventor who did the same thing. And so I wouldn't say that invention is entrepreneurship. I would say that you can be an inventor and an entrepreneur. You can do both.
Mm. And Sierra, I have seen some more people. They're trying to find the capital at the beginning for bootstrap or trying to pitch their some innovative ideas to some investors, and they taking this point as an opportunity or a kind of a milestone that they have gained some fund into their corporate, and in 1 year or 2 year we can see the declining of the corporate and they are filing for bankruptcy. So this is a kind of a startup that we have seen a lot, like 80 to 85% of the startups, they're starting well, and after 2 3 years we can't see the cash inflows and the sales are declining, and they're filing for bankruptcy. But
So,
to tend to, yeah.
so there's always companies filing for bankruptcy. There's always companies going out. The statistic in America, I think, is still the same as it's been for the last 5 to 10 years, is that 50% of small businesses, and small businesses is any business that has 100 or less employees.
Mm.
So it could be a freelance business or it could be a business that has 99 employees, and that's considered a small business, any one of those, right? And
Mm.
so it says within 5 years, 50% of those businesses will have closed their doors. And so the thing that makes a business different and continue, and it's like it's not even necessarily bad to file for bankruptcy. Like
Yeah.
I can't even
At
tell
least he
you
tried, right? Yeah.
I can't even tell
At
you how many businesses that Donald Trump has had, but I know because they've made it so big in the news that he'd filed for bankruptcy 13 times. Well, that
Wow.
was for 13 different businesses he filed for bankruptcy on, but he has something like 70 businesses. So 13
Yeah.
is such a small number. So they said, oh, he
Yeah.
filed for bankruptcy 13 times. Well, sometimes that's the best way to make sure that everyone gets paid for their investment and that you actually turn a profit for the business.
Hmm.
And the business comes out on the upside, or that the business
Yeah.
is a wash and you don't lose money on it. So when you file for bankruptcy, it allows you to walk away from the investment and to start something new. So many
Yeah.
people see death as like the end of something rather than seeing it as the opportunity for the birth of something new.
Yeah.
It's
And
like
and
it's like
si-
after Mount St. Helens, which is in Wyoming. After
Hmm.
Mount St. Helens erupted years ago, this was
Yeah.
in our recent history. Mount St. Helens erupted, a huge volcano in Wyoming in the United States.
Yeah.
It took out the entire forest area with lava. And
Hmm.
all of the animals that were there were gone. All of the trees, all of the plant life, everything was gone. And within 1 year, the trees had already grown back. Animals had started coming back into the forest. Within 2 years, it was like the volcano never erupted. And then wolves were reintroduced to the area, like wolves came back to the area, and then the population of everything leveled out and the wildlife grew even better. So having the predators as well as the regular animals in the area actually helped with the balance of life out there. And so there's always an ebb and flow, like I mentioned before, and there's always a balance to everything. So whether something is ending, it could be the amazing birth of something new. But if we get
Yeah.
so focused on the end of it and we just hone in all of our grief and our anger or our sadness or whatever emotions we might be feeling around it, and we only focus on that, we won't even see the beautiful new things that are possibly happening right now. So I don't actually think that
True.
it's bad to file for bankruptcy. I
Yeah.
personally don't want to. I want to innovate and continue to make my business better and continue for it to grow, but
Yeah.
I don't think it's bad.
And when you're saying about this bankruptcy, Sierra, I can remember the Sundar, CEO of Google. He had said once that if you are failing in a business, hold that failure as a badge of honor in your court. So it's a kind of a motivation. Yeah, someone is trying something and failed, and he's trying something again. So it's not for quitters, and it's for entrepreneurs who are trying and keep trying and coming forward and finally end up in a success way. We have seen a lot of entrepreneurs, as you mentioned, Donald Trump and even Elon Musk. They have failed a lot and bank. I mean, they have run out of money and cash flow is zero in some point and budget is zero and sales are zero and negative values and a lot of loans and they have escaped from the country in some point and come back and they have given a good entrance and they have did their achievement in one point. So this is a
So
great example,
the
as
thing
you
about
mentioned. Yeah.
money, the thing about money is people think of it as like a finite resource that like once you spend it, it's gone.
Hmm.
There's that false impression of money, but when you understand that you're just a conduit, and so it's like if you have a pipe or a pipeline, and flowing through the pipe, you have water at one end and water comes out the other end.
Yeah.
And so you turn on the faucet and water runs through the pipe. You turn off the faucet, water no longer runs through the pipe. And every once in a while, you'll have something that clogs up the pipe to where water can't run through it anymore. And so you'll clean out the clog and then water will run through it again and the pipe does its job. So once you
Hmm.
understand that you are a pipe and you're the conduit for money. Money is supposed to flow through you. You're supposed to receive it in and give it back out. Money is meant to be exchanged. It's not meant to be hoarded and held onto and just to stay in one place. It's meant to be exchanged. That was what money was designed for, was to be exchanged. And when we put money back into flow, we're actually utilizing money in the way that it desires to be used energetically. So we want to keep
Hmm.
money in flow. And so money is not a finite thing. There's so much money in the world that is allocated for it. Like people have a budget for certain things, and whether the market takes a downturn and people aren't buying, people are always buying something, because even in like the darkest times, there were people who were becoming um, billionaires during the
Yeah.
darkest times, and it was because
Yeah.
they had something that was needed during that time and they sold it and somebody
Hmm.
bought it.
Yeah.
And so there's always something that can be sold. There's always, like, people are always going to have need for things. Like, I have no clue how, I mean, I understand how, but I don't want to. I don't want to make
Hmm.
my own fabric. I don't want to make
Hmm.
my own clothes. I tried it before. It's not very fun. It takes a lot of time and effort, and I'm not nearly as good as the seamstresses.
Hmm.
So I'm always
Yeah.
going to want to have somebody making my clothes for me. Now, I don't buy things directly from the seamstress who makes it. I buy it from a store that houses it. So now we have
Yeah.
at least two people who have jobs. We have the seamstress, and then we have the
Hmm.
store that sells the clothes. So now we have jobs
Yeah.
in both locations where people can make money from, right?
Hmm.
And that's
Yeah.
just part of the natural economy. Is like,
Yeah.
as a community, we provide these services that help us have better lives. So
Yeah.
everyone will always have jobs, everyone will always have money or something to exchange or skill sets that other people need that will always be in existence.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, that the entrepreneurship is very important to increasing and rise up the standard of living of each and everyone. At the same time, allocate the money to right resources. So this entrepreneurship playing a huge role on that part. And as you mentioned, and Sierra, this entrepreneurship is not just money and not just adding value, and it's more into scientific terms when we call innovation, invention, or whatever you call. Someone is trying to sell or create some kind of value to the society. So, do you agree with that term?
Sure. Yeah.
Hmm. And so these entrepreneurs and people who are working under them, so how they should consider, I mean, a lot of people are trying to focusing on 8 to 5 jobs, and at some point they are frustrated and come into entrepreneurship. So is it the right way, or how they should start? It should be started like you, like following your passion and the experience that you have, and how they exit to be to this kind of people who are working 8 to 5, or the normal random people who are working for salaries and bills and paychecks and every day, who are
So,
focusing on
so what I would say, um, oh man, I wish I had my note cards in here. I have these note cards that I read off every day, and there's this quote from Napoleon Hill, who wrote Think and Grow Rich. He actually has, if you go to YouTube, there's a course that he put together that has 13 different videos that is available for free on YouTube now. Incredible to
mm,
have that much knowledge, power, and wisdom from this great man of the past who has these brilliant philosophies on just having a wealthy life. And wealth doesn't just mean money, it does also mean money, but it doesn't just mean money, like feeling really fulfilled in life. And
mm,
he said that it's something along the lines of like the price that you're paid will always be in direct proportion to the value that you give, your ability to do it. So the skills that you have, your ability to do it, and then how difficult it is to replace you.
mm,
And I would say that some of the best skills that anyone will ever learn is sales, marketing, copywriting, because copywriting, all three of these actually all have to do with communication. They all have to do with the
yeah,
language of persuasion. So
yeah,
sales, marketing, copywriting. I would say that all three of those skills, if you learn those skills, no matter what business you do, you will excel.
mm,
And it wasn't until I was in network marketing myself and I was just really mad. I was so mad that I had been in it for a few years and I tried. I worked so hard to get on these calls with people, to get people interested in it, to sell them. I had to hard sell everybody because I didn't know a few nuances to sales at the time. I didn't understand the principles. And so I'm sitting here like working my rear off. I'm working so hard to sell people on these products that were just like $10, $20, and I was trying really hard to sell these $150 to $300 packages because if I sold those, I made a lot more commission. And I was making pennies on the dollar. And so my paychecks were usually like between $100 to $300, which is like nothing. That's like,
yeah,
I could go get a part-time job and make more money, but I
yeah,
wanted to be at home with my kids. And so I was really frustrated and I started studying because these new people would come into the business, brand new into the network marketing business, and all of a sudden they had a huge team. They were making tons of sales. They were getting $10,000 paychecks on like their third or fourth month in the company. And I'm like, what are they doing different that I'm not doing? Like, I am hustling so hard and I'm so
mm,
stressed all the time and I'm not making very much money. And so I started studying every single person. I started doing like background searches on them, figuring out like all of the different details of their background. Every single one of them either had a background in sales or a background in marketing. Every single one of them. Not a single one of them didn't have a background in sales or marketing. And so I was like, okay,
wow,
cool. Those are the two skills I need to start studying. And so
yeah,
in that pursuit is when I found people like Brian Tracy and
mm,
Bob Proctor and Tony Robbins and John Maxwell, all teaching about leadership and mindset and go for no, where it's like just because you hear no doesn't mean that you need to go beat yourself up and kick rocks. Like if you hear no, no doesn't mean not right now. It means follow up with me
mm,
later. And so you
yeah,
keep following up with people, you keep putting out content, you keep going and talking to somebody else and not being dependent on one person for your sales.
mm,
So it's like if you're like, I'm going to close this deal, it's a $10,000 deal. And what if that deal falls through? What are you going to do? Just like kick rocks and be sad? No. Don't be dependent on one sale. Like go have several others in the pipeline so that if that one sale falls through, it's not a big deal.
yeah,
Right? And
yeah,
so going through that experience and learning that sales and marketing
Sales,
were those
marketing. Yeah.
two skills that like if as long as I had one of those two skills that I would be brilliant. And it's all going back to that persuasive communication. So being able to
Hmm.
persuade people that this is going to benefit them. And then once you know how to persuade and you're really good at persuasion, then it's just your moral compass. And it's like,
Hmm.
will this actually benefit this person? Will they have a better
Yeah.
life because of it? And then you have to be fully convinced yourself. If you have a
Hmm.
really high moral compass, you have to be fully convinced yourself that this is actually going to help them. So then you need to
Hmm.
sit there and you need to have that belief. And if you don't have that belief, don't bother trying to sell somebody. And I'm not
Yeah.
telling people not to sell. I'm telling people build the belief because
Yeah.
anything that you pursue doing, there's always a reason. And like one of the very first sales positions I ever took was with Cutco, which is Vector Marketing was the name of it. And essentially I was selling knives. And
Hmm.
they're supposed to have a lifetime warranty. We've never sent off our knives to get a lifetime warranty. We should. They need to be serviced, but I've had them for like 20 years now and they're still great. Um,
Wow. It's a
but
great product.
these kitchen knives or whatever, I believed that they were the best
Hmm.
out of every other knife out there. I had that belief. But then the thing that I struggled with at the time was I didn't believe that people should go out of their way because at the time I thought a few $100s was a lot of money.
Hmm.
So because I had that belief that that was a lot of money, when people were like, "That's a lot of money," I was like, "Yeah, I know."
Hmm.
Rather than saying, honestly, because this is an investment for your future and you'll never have to buy kitchen knives again, it's actually a
Yeah.
very small investment and we have payment options. So it's
Hmm.
like you can pay this today and it's like all you'll be budgeting for is for like the next 3 months. And then these are your knives forever. And anytime you have an issue with one, you can just send it off and they'll
Hmm.
take care of it and send you it back like it's brand new. And I could have
Yeah.
said something like that, but at the time I didn't know better. I was only 17, you know?
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but it was because I didn't have that belief. And so it's like sometimes we have to fix our belief around the product. Sometimes we have to fix our
Hmm.
belief around people's need for the product because it's like
Hmm.
they'll sometimes people will build a product and the market may not need it. And so
Hmm.
it's like I'm sitting here looking at my desk because I'm like, there's probably something in here that I don't need. Like
Hmm.
blue blockers. Blue blockers were not a really big thing back in the day.
Hmm.
They weren't. I actually remember when I was a kid, I wanted to pretend like I had glasses when I was a teenager so that I could hide behind them because I didn't feel comfortable with my skin or the way that my face looked, so I wanted to hide behind them. And so I went to, I think, Hot Topic. It's a really weird store in the mall. I went in there and I bought some fake glasses that had like no, it was just like a glass lens as opposed to actually
Okay.
being bifocals or something like that and adjusting eyesight. And so I got some of those and I was wearing those all the time. But blue blockers didn't
Hmm.
really exist back then. Now you can go to Amazon and you can get like a pack of 5 for $13.
Yeah.
And so it's like and they're all different colors and I have like I don't know, I have 19 pairs of blue blockers in all the different
Wow.
colors that I like to wear sometimes. And so but these are something I don't need these.
Yeah.
And even if and I got these at a time when we didn't have like a lot of extra cash flow, but I wanted them. And we're at a time
Hmm.
in the world where people do buy things that they want and they buy them impulsively and it's okay. And
Hmm.
and there's so many different things that we don't necessarily need but we want them that we get all the time. And so you just have to appeal to people's desires and know how to appeal to their desires. So the point would be is that if somebody's brand new and they have an offer that is not something that's a need, it's something that people would
Hmm.
want, like you can build an offer around anything. It's just you have to be really good at persuasion in the aspect of showing people why they should want it or showing people why they should need it. And if you can find an offer that people already want, it
Hmm.
makes it a lot easier to sell. So it's always easier, I would say, if you have like 2 or 3 different options of an offer that you're going to choose from, I would choose the one that the market already wants, that people are already buying. And I would just go with that one because it's you can just take a little tiny piece of the pie instead of trying to start something brand new. Everyone wants to start this blue ocean, but it's like
Hmm.
you've never sold anything in a red ocean. So you've never sold anything with people who already want it. So go
Mm-mm.
sell something that people already want, get a few sales under your belt, like just go through the experience of persuading people and talking through making that sale and fulfilling on whatever the offer is. Just go through those motions of the actions of the system or the process, prove to yourself that you can do it, and then go to your blue ocean and then market and sell that. But sell something easy first. Sell something that's really easy to sell first because it'll build a lot of confidence inside of you.
Wow. Sierra, this is a very great and the sales and the marketing pitch you have done. And right, it's the way of getting away the blockage which is in front of our way and making it easier and smoother to do the transaction. In other words, it's a simple sales and the pitch of sales, right?
So as a last thing that I think would be really valuable for anybody, do this exercise with yourself. See what your amount is that makes you hesitant. So if you were to go down to the store and you had to spend money today, what is the number? Like, so it's like imagine that every time this moves up, we're adding dollars, right? So what's
Mm,
the number that gets you up here and you're like, "Oh God." You're like, "I don't
yeah.
know about this." What's that number that makes you start feeling hesitant? That's your ceiling.
Yeah.
That's your ceiling. That's the number that needs to feel easy for you. And until that number
Mm,
feels easy, you're never going to raise your ceiling. You've created this invisible ceiling. All of us have created this invisible ceiling. And every time we level up, we have to raise our ceiling and raise our floor, right? And so it's like if you look back over the last 3 months and you look at what your income was for those 3 months, you'll have 1 month that was lower than all the others, and you'll have 1 month that was higher. I actually prefer doing this over like a 6 month period. But you look at the lowest month and you look at the highest month. That's your ceiling and that's your floor for income, for how much money you collect
mm,
into the business. So if we
yeah.
want to move up to the next level in business, we have to raise our ceiling and we have to raise our
Mm,
floor, which means we have to raise the amount of need that our business has in terms of expenses. And then you just need to
mm,
think of like, what are the expenses that would actually help the business produce a higher income? So maybe that's ads, maybe that's certain team members who do more of the work so it frees up more of your time to sell or to do other things. Maybe it's building a sales team out. Maybe it's building that website that automatically sells or that funnel that automatically sells or something like that. Maybe it's that. But you figure out
mm,
whatever that floor is and you raise the floor that helps raise the ceiling, right?
mm,
And so we do
yeah.
that over time. We raise that ceiling, we raise that floor. But if you just play with, like, okay, if I went down to the store and say my grocery bill was like $1,200, I think that's my cap for a grocery bill right now. Because if I
Yeah.
spend 1,100, I'd be like, I've done that before.
Mm,
And if it's
true.
anything less than that, I'm like, I've done that before. But if it was $1,200, I'd probably go, you know, and
Yeah.
I'd be like, ah. So that's my ceiling for groceries right now.
Yeah.
And so we can do that with anything. Like if I were to go spend money on clothes, like what's the number of spending money on clothes that I would get like
Mm,
this is too much to spend in a month,
yeah.
And so we look at those like ceilings and floors and we really think about it. If say your money for spending on clothes, like a clothing budget was like $300 and you were like, that's too much. Like I'm not going to spend more than 300. But how many clients would it take to cover that? So you just get one more client and you're good?
Mm,
Or you just get another job that pays you like 500 or 1,000 more per month?
yeah.
It's like it's really not as big of a deal as we make it out to be, but we put these barriers there because we think, oh, well, the people who buy clothes all the time, like they're very self-absorbed or they're self-obsessed or whatever, like, and we start paying attention to those beliefs that are running around in our brain. Then
Mm,
we realize what the reality is. It actually has nothing to do with the cost, and it has everything to do
yeah.
with what we believe that the thing we're paying for is going to get us
Mm,
or who we're going to become. It's more of an identity than it is anything to do with the actual money itself.
yeah. When you're saying about this Sierra, the limit that the humans are limiting themselves, that I can jump to this much, but actually, if he tried, he can jump more. So, in scientific term, we can see the universe which is expanding, and human also evolving and expanding, and but we are limiting ourselves, right? So we have to ignore and destroy that barrier, and which is a kind of a mind game. I feel like we are thinking ourselves, okay, I can target or achieve this much, but if we somehow
So
achieve more than that, then feel okay, I can do more than that, right?
so the barrier, the thing is that it's you can't destroy something that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
The barrier doesn't actually exist.
Hmm. That's the
We
mind.
just it's like when somebody sees something that isn't there. Like at night,
Mm,
you might see a silhouette of a person and then you flip on the lights and there's nothing there. And it's
mm,
like our mind is playing tricks on us and our mind is visualizing things based on our fears. But there's really
yeah,
nothing there. And fear is
yeah,
just belief in something that we don't want. So all we have to do is
yeah.
shift our belief onto the thing that we do want rather than focusing on the thing that we don't want. Just don't focus on
Mm,
what you don't want, focus on what you do want. And
yeah.
and then instead of asking is it possible, ask how is it possible? And then let the
Mm,
universe unfold it for you. Um
yeah.
I felt like there was something else that I wanted to share. Hmm.
That I too remember a book called The Secret,
Mm-hmm.
which is
Oh, yes.
yeah,
It's great that you brought that up. Bob
mm,
Proctor
yeah.
had this really cool saying that he would tell people all the time, and it was that make a million small. So it's like if you saw, and I was talking about 1,200 for groceries, if I saw 1,200 for groceries as small,
Mm,
then it wouldn't be a big deal. I wouldn't feel that like feeling at all because it's
yeah,
not that much. It's like I see
yeah.
100 or 200 for groceries as absolutely nothing. So I have no
Mm,
problem just spending $97 here, 150 there. Like it's not a big deal. But if
mm,
it was 1,200, all of a sudden that number seems big. So if I made 1,200 feel small, like how can I make 1,200 feel small? What can I do to make 1,200 feel small? Well, in the same respect, what can I do to make a million feel small? And he said, once you make a
mm,
million feel small, it becomes really easy to make $1 million,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so we can stair step through that, find our current ceiling. So rather than trying to destroy a barrier so that we're completely unlimited, because
Mm,
like if we're destroying all of the limits at once, it's actually very difficult for our mind to create so many new synapses at once. In fact, when somebody is creating new connections in the brain so fast like that, it can make you feel sick, like your physical body doesn't know how to handle it because we're not
yeah.
used to that level of transition in our brain
Mm,
patterns. And so like one at a time is okay to do. And so if you raise your barrier from 10,000 to 20,000 to 50,000 to
mm,
80,000 to 100,000, that's okay. If you go straight to 100,000, also okay.
yeah, yeah. It's very
And
hard to
both all of those
conceive to
numbers are
mind.
really
Yeah,
small,
yeah,
right? And so the
yeah.
smaller, like let's make our ceiling feel small first. And once we make our
Mm,
ceiling feel small, then we
mm,
can go to the next ceiling.
yeah,
After that current ceiling feels small, then we can go to the next ceiling and make that one
yeah.
feel small.
Systematically. Yeah.
Yeah, and just like stair step. Like we don't have to do everything all at once. We don't have
Mm,
to like suddenly be a billionaire or a trillionaire.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
we can
True.
stair step. We can make multi six figures a year. We can make $1 million a year. We can make multi millions first before we become that billionaire that we desire to be. If that's something that we want, maybe that's not even something we want.
Yeah. Wow, that was a great explanation from Sarah. And we have discussed a lot here. And compared to the previous episode, and you can watch our and listen to our previous episode, which is in YouTube and Spotify. And this was very amazing. And we have talked a lot about sales pitch and the marketing and how the mind can conceive some goals and how we can advance step to step forward and what are the barriers we have, which is a mind kind of barriers, and how we can contrast it and how we can eradicate that kind of barriers, and how the life should be and how we manage the personal life and the business life and where we are traveling and the purpose of life actually. And it was a very meaningful conversation. And Sierra, and thank you very much for you and joining with me. And at last I would like to ask one more question, Sarah. Thank you very much again. And what is your advice again for the people listening to this episode?
So my favorite thing to tell people is that it doesn't actually matter what you decide. So many people will get hung up on decisions, and indecision can make a person feel very, very sick and can make a person like feel depressed. You can feel really bad. You can go to bed worrying at night to where you're dreaming about the things you're worried about. It doesn't matter what you decide. No matter what the decision is, if it's in relationships, if it's in business, if it's familial, if it's in hobbies, if it's in just pursuits, it doesn't matter what you decide. It just matters that you make a decision. So just sit down, write out the things you're deciding between, and just pick one. It doesn't matter what you decide. It just matters that you make a decision and you run with it. And when I say run with it, I don't mean stick with it for 30 days and be like, oh, it didn't work. Because if we know that it's a really short period of time, we kind of put one foot in and have one foot out because we know it's going to end soon. So stick with something for at least 90 days. Make your decision and stick with it for 90 days. So if you're picking an offer, pick that offer and go all in for the next 90 days and prove to yourself that you can make a few sales, that you can fulfill on it. And then if you don't like it, you can switch and shift to something else. You can always change your mind in the future.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Cierra.
Absolutely.